Many times, parts of a story are left out, simply because we only hear one side of the story. Many people believe that Michael Jordan was the player who took the NBA to a global reach with his game, with his moves, with his aura. But that wasn't exactly the case. There was a rivalry that was the cause of basketball reaching all corners of the world: Magic Johnson and Larry Bird. They were the two players of the moment in 1979, and every time they faced each other, sparks flew. However, it is curious that we are seeing a very similar process again almost 50 years later. I'm not talking about the NBA, but the WNBA. We have seen how the Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese rivalry has moved from college to professional basketball. Two players born in the same year who entered the draft at the same time and have starred in duels that have been followed by millions of fans around the world. But what can this rivalry mean for women's sports? Can this rivalry single-handedly turn the WNBA into a profitable league? Let's talk about this. It's rare when this happens in any sport. It's not normal to see two huge talents collide on the court at all levels, for the simple reason that it's rare for two players destined to lead a generation to have shared so many moments together prior to their professional careers.
And Angel Reese knows a ring is coming.
Yes, I know that as players, Caitlin and Angel are nothing alike. For starters, they don't even play the same position. Technically, Clark is the better player, by far. Her talent in women's basketball is unprecedented. By now, we all know her shot selection is absurd. And we also know she can run an entire offense at the same time. But we can't find much precedent for Angel Reese's mentality either. The 6'3" forward is a true dog, and has shown more desire to win than any player we've ever seen.
20 years and be like, yeah, the reason why we watching women's basketball is not just because of one person, it's because of me too, and I want y'all to realize that. Like, it's not just because of one person. A lot of us have done so much for this game, and Kennedy has been here before, obviously, but there are so many great players in this league that have deserved this for a really, really long time, and luckily, it's coming now.
Now, Larry Bird and Magic Johnson were also completely different players. While Bird was a spectacular scorer during his prime who dominated the boards, Magic was a pass-first guard who was able to run the offense like no other player his size. But the point is that both demonstrated their dominance through their style of play, first at Indiana State and Michigan, where they reached the NCAA tournament finals, and then in the NBA. In fact, Magic and Bird were two rookies so impressive that they managed to turn their teams into contenders during an entire decade. Bird finished fourth in the MVP race in 1979, when he had just arrived in the NBA, after signing the highest rookie contract in Major League history. A story that has certain similarities with that of Caitlin, who signed an unprecedented contract in women's sports for tens of millions of dollars with Nike when she had not yet played a single game in professional basketball. In addition, neither Bird nor Clark were able to win the NCAA tournament despite reaching the final. For her part, Angel also has some similarities with Magic. Not in play style, that's for sure, but she showed her dominance in one of the strongest programs in all of college basketball, such as LSU, and she won the head-to-head matchup against her biggest rival, which was none other than Caitlin Clark's Iowa. It is clear that neither athlete has been able to change the course of the franchise since their rookie year, as Bird and Magic did. But that's because such a thing is unthinkable in modern basketball. Take Wembanyama as an example. The greatest talent to come to men's basketball practically since LeBron James. He's the chosen one, the future face of the best basketball league in the world. And yet, the Spurs were having one of the worst seasons in NBA history. Do you think I'm exaggerating? On January 7th, the Spurs had a record of 5 wins and 30 losses. This situation is similar to what Caitlin and Angel are going through. Neither the Indiana Fever nor the Chicago Sky are teams that are going to contend for the title. In fact, we will most likely see them getting a high pick in next year's draft. But their rivalry is so great that it doesn't really matter to anyone. The game the Sky and the Fever recently played was the most watched game in the WNBA for the last 23 years. A simple regular season game between two teams that do not exceed 33% in wins. A fact that clearly shows the phenomenon that these two athletes are awakening. As if that weren't enough, this is not the only case. Since women's college basketball began to be broadcasted on television, there have been half a dozen games that have reached 10 million viewers. Now, 4 of those 6 games have occurred in the last 2 years. And what's even more incredible, those 4 matches featured either Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, or both. With 18.7 million viewers, the Final Four a few weeks ago between Iowa and South Carolina is the most watched women's college basketball game in history. It's followed by Iowa-UConn and the 2 head-to-head matchups between Iowa and LSU at 4th and 6th. And this is exactly what happened in 1979, when the final of the NCAA tournament that featured Magic Johnson's Michigan against Larry Bird's Indiana State was the most watched game in the history of NCAA basketball. Not only that, but that 1979 is still the most watched NCAA basketball game ever, with over 35 million viewers, almost 50 years later. Fans don't even care if their teams are the best or not. They simply want to see how the careers of these two players who are destined to expand women's basketball around the world unfold. And even though their process of adapting to the league is going slower than people expected, at least in Clark's case, no one's getting off the bandwagon. Because even though her team is disappointing, she's showing signs of quality that suggest she'll be able to dominate the league for years to come. The perfect example came shortly after her loss in the NCAA tournament final. As Caitlin was preparing to be picked first overall in the 2024 draft, she received an absolutely unimaginable offer. Ice Cube, owner of the Big Three, a competitive league of former NBA players, knew that if he could get Clark to agree to play in the competition, the ratings would multiply. For that reason, Caitlin received an offer of $5 million to participate in the competition, which she turned down. If an owner is capable of making an offer like that, it's because he knows there's plenty of potential to make it profitable. An even more extraordinary case than that of Angel Reese, whose NIL was valued at nearly $2 million during her final season in college, a figure that's equivalent to 25 times the value of her annual rookie contract in the WNBA. There have been many brands such as Reebok, Airbnb, Beats by Dre, PlayStation, and Amazon that have fought to sign the rising star. The truth is that we still don't know the extent of their influence. Or in other words, we don't know how important Clark and Reese will end up being for the league. It's clear that they aren't going to impact their teams on the same level that Bird or Magic did, who took turns appearing in every NBA Finals during the first decade of their career. Yes, since Magic was a rookie and won the NBA championship with the Lakers, and until 9 years later, at least one of these two players participated in the finals every year. But even if neither Reese nor Clark are going to have this collective success, as I said, that's the least important aspect at the moment. For the simple reason that at some point, these two players will be on competitive teams that can aspire to build a dynasty. The results of this phenomenon have already been visible. Merchandising sales are up 700% over other seasons, and television networks such as CBS and ESPN have tripled their ratings from the previous season. Data that shows the enormous influence that Caitlin and Reese are having on women's basketball. The WNBA needs to take full advantage of this trend to increase its profits, just as the NBA did during the 80s by taking advantage of the talent of its generational players. If anything, we know that the potential is there for this to happen again. The similarities between these two eras are more than you might first realize. The sky's the limit for women's basketball, and I truly believe the golden generation for the WNBA has arrived.